Hi, everybody. It's Dale Walsh, D. Walsh, the poetic warrior of the mental health warriors. And today we have a very exciting show with someone named Joey Kramer, who is a he runs the Reality Practice Network and teaches people how to rewire themselves and their brains and their nervous system. And he has a very interesting background and has dealt with mental health issues. And I'm looking forward to having the conversation. Welcome, Joey.
Thank you, Dale. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be here and look forward to sharing my story, sharing my journey, and uh, you know, showing people what it is I do and how I help mental health. People that suffer from mental health, like yourself and me, and many of us out there, overcome the stories we've been told and the misdiagnosis and all of the all of the things that you know come up when we're dealing with mental health issues. So
Right.
thank you for having me.
Well, you're welcome, and let me just get our banner going, and then we'll start. Hello, everybody. Thank you for attending. It's Tuesday, August 9th. It's the dog days of summer, the day after the Lions Gate portal of which is a major astrological event, and it's supposed to let a lot of energy, positive on the earth. And thank you very much for coming. As is your tradition, I'm going to start with a poem, and because I'm the poetic warrior, and then we'll get into discussing and talking with Joey. So this is called The Foundation of My Devotion. It is remotely possible someone might love you more than I, but nobody will ever encounter believes in you as I do, because I believe you have the purest heart yet conceived, because I believe you have a genuine desire to be well, because I believe you can control designs of your demons, because I believe you embody a spirit that is invincible, because I believe you carry a capacity for love that is endless, because I believe you are strong enough to conquer your proud problems, because I believe you try to shelter loved ones from your pain, because I believe you always make effort to make things right, because I believe you have empathy for every person you meet, because I believe you exercise will to uncover hard answers, because I believe you possess the determination to triumph, because I believe you will allow nothing to stop your happiness, because I believe you represent divine reality of salvation, because I believe you are a living example of God's grace, because I have witnessed magnitude of your earthly passion, showing me the sacred actuality of true potential of this life, growing in beauty every day by the light of your brilliance, because I believe in the overwhelming purity of your blessed soul. So that's from my third book, For Those Who Hate Verse, available at Amazon. And welcome, Joey. How are you today?
I am fantastic. Excited to be here, Dale. Thank you for having me on the show and looking forward to hopping into whatever you want to dive into today. Like I told you before, I'm pretty open book, and yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the Lions portal. Definitely a lot of energy going on right now, a lot of craziness in the world, and I think we're getting ready to see a major turn. I don't know if it's going to be great right out the bat, or if it's going to be something that we've got to ease into. A lot of things happening.
Absolutely. And people keep saying things can't get much worse, and then they seem to be getting worse. So we got to hit rock bottom at some point, and then it'll be all uphill. But I'm a firm believer in the idea that the human race is evolving through all this, and not only is the human race evolving, but the whole Earth and the whole ecosystem of Earth is evolving. So I think we're definitely on a way to a higher consciousness, but getting there can be very tough.
Yeah, change and growth is never comfortable. They say you got to get uncomfortable in order to grow, in order to evolve, and I think we're all experiencing that right now for sure. It's not a very comfortable time to be alive, but for me, I couldn't be more excited about what's coming. I do a lot of meditations and spiritual work, and I've seen what's coming. I've been shown glimpses of the future and what we have to look forward to, and there's nothing to be afraid of. Everything we see right now is simply a distraction to keep us from evolving and discovering our true potential and our divine nature. That's my personal belief in it also. We just got to keep fighting as mental health warriors, fighting as sovereign beings of this planet and of sovereign beings of the universe. When we discover our true power, there will be nothing that can stop us, and we're quickly awakening to that. I have a feeling, my
Right.
friend.
Well, I think of the famous quote, all growth begins at the edge of your comfort zone. So,
Yeah.
And the universe is really seems to be trying to make everybody on Earth uncomfortable, but that's the prelude to growth and progress. So why don't you just tell me a little bit about yourself? I know we went over it yesterday, but you you basically try to rewire the brain and like get people to overcome themselves through various methods that you developed. And why don't you give me some background not only on what you do, but also the journey that brought you here?
Yeah, I'd love to share that with you. And that's exactly what I work with people and do is I help them reprogram their minds, reprogram their beliefs regarding their past and their past traumas. I call myself a trauma reprogramming specialist. We've all experienced some form of trauma. Some of us have experienced a ton of trauma, very traumatic, very horrific events in our lives, and I teach people through my own personal journey, my own personal experience, how to rewrite those stories we tell ourselves of that event, of what we believe shaped us into who we are. That's kind of the misconception. I feel like that everybody we believe we are what has happened to us. We forget that that was just an event. That was just something that happened in order for us to evolve, in order for us to learn and grow from. Instead, most of us are trapped in this identity crisis, that we are the trauma, that I am, I was abused. Let's start off. I was abandoned at birth by my biological father. I was sexually abused and experienced trauma on as a child. Uh, I developed Tourette's syndrome uh, right around my teenage years, 12, 13 years old. Uh, Fell into the traps of alcohol, drugs, addictions, sexual addictions, you name it. I anything I could do basically to kind of mask who I thought I was, mask that pain that I always felt inside me. Progress on. I got married at 28, had a couple children, and went through a very hard, devastating, traumatic divorce that lasted a couple years as well. And it wasn't until about 2014, 2015, I met my current wife, April. And, we kind of went on a journey together of growth, development, healing. We started off down the path of self-development and business development. We're both entrepreneurs. We own our own companies. We've been in the startup world for collectively since 2009. So, not having a job per se, with salary and benefits and all the things that people become accustomed to. I haven't had that stuff going on 13, 14 years. I've had to fight and scratch for everything to try and build what we have now. And through that process of really building businesses, self-improvement, all of that, it led me down a deeper tunnel, a deeper path, which evolved into more spirituality and personal development on a soul level, which is what I've really been working on the last few years. I think a lot of people have been working on that once the pandemic hit and everything got shut down. I think we had a lot of time to go within and start asking a lot of those questions, of who we are and what's our purpose, what are we meant to be here to accomplish. And that led me down a path of I started getting into Tony Robbins. I'm sure you're familiar with him.
I actually just did a Tony Robbins program. The release, The Power Within, about
UPW.
Yeah.
That was the entry point for my wife and me as well. We've now done a couple of those UPWs, but we did the whole gamut. We signed up for all of the programs, all of the seminars, and it was back in 2020, December of 2020, I attended and went through his Date with Destiny seminar. And that's when the miracle, I call it, of what I did, what I was able to do, happened to me through the process. And what I did in the December of 2020 is we went back in time through meditation, through different practices. I went back in time and I rewrote my entire past all the way up to I rewrote my DNA, my biological DNA. And I'll share that story with you here briefly and how I did it. Because if I hadn't have actually experienced it, if I hadn't actually done it, I wouldn't have believed it for myself, And what happened was I entered into that event knowing I'd been doing all this work on myself, from 2019 through 2021, I literally read over 400 books, and I've been just engulfed in this, trying to discover who I was, trying to heal from my past. And I realized that all of the pain, all of the struggle, all of the BS that I'd experienced in my life, the self-limiting beliefs, that stemmed from this idea of abandonment by my biological father when I was born. He left my mom and me and moved down to Texas, and that was it. I never had him again in my life. And, while my mom got remarried, I have an incredible dad now, my stepfather, who I consider my dad. I went until about, I think, the age of 7, 8 before she got remarried. So I had a lot of time, many years in between, where I didn't have a father. And, those are those impressionable years, that 4, 5, 6, 7 years old and even beyond. But it set me up in my mind for a lot of disempowering beliefs, a lot of feeling that lack of, that I didn't deserve love, that I wasn't good enough for it, that I wasn't good enough for success, that I believed I was meant to follow in his footsteps. He was an alcoholic, a womanizer, abusive, had left my mom. And here I came out of a divorce in 2014, where now I appeared to be following in his same footsteps, right? At least that's the story I'm telling myself. Was I destined to be this person? I have the same DNA as him. So obviously the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Well, the amazing thing is I go into this event, and after day one, I already realized that that's where all my problems, all my struggle, the anger and the frustration that I experienced all the time, it stemmed from that. So what I did on day one or day two, the morning of, I get up early and I wrote a letter to my dad to forgive him for not, I realized it wasn't his fault. It was only the story I'd been telling myself, and that I needed to release this pain, this anger that I had. So I started to write him a letter, and I got one sentence in and just lost it and just cried for an hour straight and just let it all go, realizing, it was always on me. It was never about him, and that I had fooled myself into believing it was his fault when it was really just a story. So I ended up, I got to compose myself, got everything back. And at that point, I realized I didn't even have to write that letter. I was like, I looked down at the piece of paper and was like, I just let it all go. I'm a new person. I don't need to even mess with it. You know, I had healed from it. Well, we go through the rest of the week and it was at one point we did a early childhood regression meditation. And what happened in that was I went back to a moment in my childhood that I'd forgotten all about. I didn't even remember it existed. And I put myself into a 5-year-old state. And it was my mom and me. We were going down to Texas to see and visit my dad. And I could only assume she was going down there to try and reconnect, try and bring him home, you know, and start up a family again, to give me a dad. So we were asked during that meditation, what were you thinking and feeling right before that happened? And for me, I was so excited. I'm like, yay, I get to go meet my dad. You know, if I do good, if I impress him, he's going to come home and we'll be a family. And then it sunk in on me, all the pressure and all the stress that I had thinking about that moment as a 5-year-old kid. I couldn't control any of it. Yet in my mind, the story I had told myself was it was all on me. I had to perform. He had to like me, or it was going to be all my fault if he didn't come home. So I'm understanding.
You were probably thinking it was your fault in the first place, right?
Absolutely.
You were probably thinking a lot of it was your fault in the first place, right? So you grew up with that guilt that you're dealing with as a 5-year-old, right?
Yes, that's exactly how it was. You know, I was excited until I realized that some mind guilt and to feel like it was my fault. So you're absolutely right. And at that point, we were told, okay, if somebody else is in this memory, put yourself in their eyes and view it from their point of view. So I entered into my mom's mind and her body, and I could feel all of the stress, all of the anxiety, all of the fear that she had. I could literally feel it. And I started to cry during this meditation because I'm feeling that all she wanted was to give me a father, but she didn't know what to do. She was there giving herself back to this guy in hopes that he would come home and solve this problem. He'd be my dad, right? Be her husband. And I felt a feeling of compassion for her at that moment that I'd never felt before, you know? And I started crying, like I said, through this process. And then Tony said, if there's somebody else there, put yourself into their mind. And I jump into the mind of my father, and same thing. I could instantly feel his pain, his fear, his anxiety. You know, he went down to Texas to escape being a father, being a husband, and he wanted to live his own life. Yet here we were trying to rope him back in against his will, you know? So I felt this compassion for him that I'd never felt before. And it made me realize, it made me understand the power of forgiveness. I had to, at that moment, I forgave each and every one of them. And most importantly, I forgave myself. I forgave myself for the stories and the lies that I'd believed about who I was, all stemming from this one moment of my life that I couldn't even remember until this moment in time. And I come out of that meditation and I was just completely changed. I was an entirely new person at that moment. And
was your wife with you?
Yeah, she was there too. She had her own experience during that. It's a different story for her, but whole different story. But yeah, it was one of those, neither one of us really could talk after that was over because it was so powerful and so impactful for us. You know, so the event ended a few days later, and it took me a couple days before I gathered the courage to call my mom on the phone. And I wanted to share with her everything that had just happened, everything I went through. And I told her how amazing this was and how I'd forgiven her and I'd forgiven my dad and I'd forgiven myself and said it was never anybody's fault. I said, Mom, you did everything exactly the right way. You made me who I am today, and I'm so grateful for it. I love you. And by this time, she's in tears, crying. I wish I would have done, I wish it would have been harder on you. And I'm thinking, Mom, I tried to kill myself multiple times, in my early 20s and 30s. I said, if you would have told me, if you would have been any harder on me, I probably would have broke. I said, you were exactly who you needed to be for what I needed at that time. And that's when she says to me, Joey, there's something I need to tell you. I've been hiding something from you for your entire life, and I need to tell you this. And I'm like, okay. At this point, I'm riding on top of the world. I'm like, shoot, what is it? Nothing can hurt me at this point. I've healed from all that bullshit. So I'm like, please, what is it, Mom? And she goes, Joey, she pauses and says, Robert, he's not your father. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. What did I hear you right? I spent 40 years of my life beating myself up, creating these stories about this guy I didn't even know and the cause of all my pain. And then this past week, I spent all this time healing from him, healing from that story and forgiving it all and releasing it all. And the second I did that, now she's hitting me with this. He's not even your father. And I'm like, this is insane. I'm excited though. I'm like, okay, who is my father? Let's do this. Come on. And she's crying.
At least I don't have his DNA that feels screwed me up for so long. So right?
Exactly. It was a story. It was all a story. I told myself that I had his DNA, therefore I'm destined to follow in his footsteps. And at that moment in time, it was all just bullshit. It was all a lie. I had nothing to do with him. He was simply my mom's first husband, and he left when I was born. That's all he ever was, So how can I be mad at him? He didn't do anything to me. So she goes on to tell me she went to every possible avenue she could to have a child, and he wasn't capable of having them. So infertile. So she went to every avenue she could find, and going as far as reaching out to the Colombian embassy to see if she could adopt an orphan child from Colombia. And that's when I stopped her on the phone. I'm like, wait a minute, Mom, are you telling me the reason I get so tan in the summertime and the reason I'm the only one in our entire family with blue eyes? I'm like, are you telling me I'm Colombian? She's crying still. She's like, no, honey, no, you're not Colombian. I'm like, dang, that would have been kind of cool to find out,
Right.
She goes on to tell me that back in 1978 at the hospital that she worked at here in Kansas City, she enrolled in an experimental program, which we now know is in vitro fertilization. And come to find out that my biological father wasn't this womanizing, alcoholic, abusive man that I'd always believed, but my real father was actually a doctor at hospital who had donated. He was actually a med student who became a doctor, but he had donated to the program, and the rest is history. I'm now the son, and at that moment, I realized I'm now the son of a doctor, of a literal medical doctor, which made a whole lot of sense because I never really fit in a lot with everybody in my family. Nothing wrong with that. They were just always blue collar construction workers, things like that. And I always felt like there was more. I always felt like I was pulled towards something more than that. And it made a lot of sense at that moment. It's like, well, duh, I've got the DNA of a doctor in me. So obviously I've got a good head on my shoulders. I'm a lot smarter than I ever gave myself credit for, all these years. But what happened by doing that, what happened when I discovered this, I released myself and everybody involved from this lie. Only 4 people in the world knew about this. My mom, my father, her first husband, who I thought was my father, my stepdad, and my uncle, who had just passed away a year before. So they had all vowed to take this to the grave with them because they didn't think I was strong enough to handle the truth. And by doing all this inner healing work, she realized that now was the time to tell me the truth about it all. And in doing so, yeah, I released her from 40 years of lies that she'd been having to deal with, and the guilt and the shame and the pain of it all. And at the end of the day, not only did I rewrite my biological DNA, but I also rewrote the biological DNA of my children, both of my boys now. Their grandfather wasn't this guy that I thought it was. Their grandfather was also a doctor. So it's like, I look at them now, I'm like, you guys don't have any excuse for failing. And when it comes to school, at least, I'm like, you guys are set up for success. You're the only ones that can screw this up. So yeah, it was amazing. And I credit it all. And this is what I teach people. I credit it all to the power of compassion, forgiveness, and love, because those were the three key fundamental things I used throughout that process to reimagine this story. First, I had to see this story for what it was. I had to see that moment in time that had such an impact on me. And I had to understand that everything happens exactly the way it's supposed to happen. And it's always happening for us. Nothing ever happens to us. We live in a universe where God loves us. God wants us to be successful. He wants us to live in happiness and joy and love. But sometimes bad things happen. Sometimes traumas come into our lives, and they serve us in the way that helps us grow, helps us discover more about who we are, helps us become stronger, helps us learn to have compassion and to forgive,
Right.
not only others, but ourselves. We are the first and foremost people that we have to forgive, because we all fell victim to the illusion. This isn't real. The past doesn't exist. The future doesn't exist. There's only right here and right now. And as long as we fall victim to the illusion, then it's hard to escape it. It's hard to escape that memory of the past that haunts us. So I use that power of forgiveness.
Or that fear of the future too.
Huh?
Or that fear of the future too.
Yeah. There is no future, but we fear it, out of the things that have happened to us in the past. Something that happens to us in the past, we project it into the future thinking it could happen again. So it holds us back from moving forward. It keeps us stuck in this present moment. We're basically slaves to our own imagination at that point in time. So that's really all of it there.
That's a fascinating story, and especially with the twist of the in vitro fertilization that came out of like left field. I guess like nobody could have conceived that happen. But
right.
You were talking about I want to change direction a little bit, because you said your sons are the grandchildren of a doctor, and they have no excuse for like academic problems and everything. But you said that you and your wife are both entrepreneurs. So how do you? I mean, I obviously can't tell your children what to do with their lives, but I mean, do you see your children going through like the traditional thing of like college and school and everything, or as an entrepreneur? This is just something that interests me, because I'm also an entrepreneur in a different business. But do you see encouraging your children to become entrepreneurs and like live outside the traditional system to and find success there? Or are you like planning on having them go the traditional route?
No, that's a great question, and absolutely it's up in the air at this point. We've raised our boys through our entrepreneurial journey. We've taught them every step of the way, and we continue to teach them how business works, how the real world works, not this fairy tale they teach you in college. Now, college, the way the education system is set up at this point in time, I don't encourage anybody to go to college. It's a bunch of shit. Unless you're going to be a doctor, an attorney, an engineer, something specialized, right? Everything else nowadays in college is just a waste of money to indoctrinate them into whatever they want them to believe. But we've always and will continue to allow our children the choice. If they want to go to college, I'm not going to tell them no. My oldest one, he's just entering high school, and he wants to be a pediatric doctor or a pediatric dentist is kind of that's where his sights are set right now. And obviously he'd need to go to a lot of schooling for that. And he's got the brains for it. So I completely encourage him if that's the route he wants to go. My youngest one, however, he's a guitarist. He's the musician. He's the artist in the family. And at the same time, he's really smart and top, upper portion of his class. But we've encouraged him since day one. If college isn't his thing, travel the world, go get a bartending job at a beach bar in the Caribbean and live down there for a year and just experience life, experience whatever it has to offer, and pursue music, pursue your art, be you. Don't feel like you have to go into societal norms because that's what they say you have to do. I'm the farthest thing from an inside the box type of person. I've always been on the outside of what looks normal or what seems correct. It's like, we teach our kids that all the time. Ask the tough questions. Don't just take it as what they tell you. Try and see things outside the box. Be a problem solver and ask the hard questions, and don't just go with the flow. Don't just go with what everybody tells you to do. Don't go with the sheep.
Right. You don't go with the sheep, but follow Christ, who's the shepherd, right?
Right. Lead the sheep. Don't follow the sheep.
Yeah. So tell us about your work with rewiring the brain, and because there's some people that say, well, actually, I don't know. I won't say some people, but there's a doctor named Dr. Alec Travetti who teaches that, instead of saying trauma, we should just say root experiences, and that change our lives. And sometimes they're good and sometimes they're bad. And trauma has like such a negative connotation to it, but there are like a lot of traumatic effects that are good to change your life for the good. And and I'm just like wondering how you go about like getting people to change their stories, because the stories are sometimes so deeply ingrained that it's virtually impossible to like change them without like I don't know if you've come up with a method for that, but I'd be interested to hear.
Yeah, well, it's a variety of different approaches that I use. I started off learning a lot back on my journey from Dr. Joe Dispenza and the amazing work that he does. And my own journey, I've learned, I healed my entire knee. I blew my knee out in 2020, early on in 2020, when I was out exercising. And being entrepreneurs, we didn't have health insurance, so I couldn't do anything about it. I just had to deal with the pain and limp. I could barely put weight on it. And using techniques from what Dr. Dispenza taught, I literally went in and would meditate and would focus on my knee and healing it. I imagined, like, while meditating, I imagined all these little workers inside my body. The cells of my body were construction workers, and they were rolling out a blueprint. And literally, they were looking at my blueprint of my knee, and they were repairing it with their little hammers and chisels and saws. And I envisioned them working on my knee and restoring it back to its perfect original state. I believe we're all born perfect, and we all can come back to that perfection. It's just the self-limiting beliefs that have caused us to think we are imperfect. and our body takes the shape and the form of the thoughts that we give it. If we think we're ill, if we think we're overweight, if we think we're unhealthy in a sense, we will become unhealthy. We will be overweight. We will be the things we think about. And it goes deeper than that. Our mind's so powerful. When we envision and when we instill and ingrain that thought, when we ingrain that image into our minds, into that subconscious mind, the brain, the mind has a funny way of working. It starts to subconsciously believe what you tell it. It starts to actually do what you program it to do. We're no different than computers. And we just have to go in and rewrite the code. We have to rewrite the program, and it's a different operating system at that point. It's a different program. We can do that within our minds, and we have to do it first by coming to the reality and understanding that there isn't a past, there isn't a future. You know, I bring a lot of quantum physics into what I do, but I don't try to go deep into the quantum realm because that confuses a lot of people. But, you know, the science of it all is you have to first understand that right here and right now is all there is. And that whatever we're pumping into our minds is processing out instantaneously. So, and your mind will believe whatever you put into it. Imagine, for instance, I use this one as an example. Imagine a sexual experience, an erotic moment in your life. If you closed your eyes and you thought of that erotic moment for just a minute, however long, your body would start to physically get aroused. The endorphins, all of the hormones would start pumping through your body because you're simply remembering that moment. That's how our bodies work. They don't care if it's real or make-believe. Our mind causes our body to react regardless of whether it's real or not. So that's kind of the fundamental principle of how we can rewrite the past, how we can remove this trauma that we don't want there anymore. We have to be able to first realize it's possible. And two, we have to know the right techniques on how to reprogram it. And it's something that, unless you're very adept at it, unless you're practicing it and have been practicing it for quite a while, it's something that's hard to do overnight. Mine took 10 days, basically, from the time I started that seminar, The Date with Destiny, to the time I talked with my mom and realized that I'd rewritten my DNA. But for most people, it doesn't happen that fast. This is a training your brain. We have to start with affirmations. I use incantations. Incantations are a little bit different than affirmations. Affirmations are great to repeat and say, you know, I am wealthy, I live in abundance, yada, yada, yada. Don't stop doing those. Those are great. But where the real power comes in are in the incantations. And incantations are a specific phrase that you will say to yourself about who you are. And you say it over and over and over like you're incanting a spell, because you're basically putting a spell on your body. You're putting a spell on your mind.
Right.
Your mind will do what you tell it to do if it becomes habit and subconscious in your programming. So whatever incantation you want to program into your mind, it can be done. And sometimes you can do it in a matter of a couple weeks. Sometimes it takes a month for you to program that incantation into your mind and to where your body will start to become what you believe what it believes it is. So yeah, incantations, proper mindset are so important on this. The next step is meditation. I don't know if you do much meditation or any at all.
Not as much as I should.
Meditate, that's fine.
I have quiet periods where I just like sit in silence, but it's not meditation itself. But
Right. But that is a form of meditation. There's many forms of meditation. Praying is the simplest form of meditation. Just the religions, the churches have made us think that meditation is some quasi weird type of, practice, versus praying is you're praying to God. No, it's all talking to God. It's all connecting to source, whether you want to call it prayers or meditation. But there's so many different types of meditations that you can do out there. The key to it all, though, is being able to shut down the external world, all of the noise that is coming. You know, our minds process about 60,000 different thoughts on any given day. And with those 60,000, how many do you think are actual conscious thoughts? 1,000?
Less than
You know,
less than 2 to 5%.
right? Exactly. So I mean, it's literally 97%, 98% of the 60,000 thoughts racing through our mind each and every day are subconscious, and that's what's creating this version of reality for you, for me, for each of us. So when we can learn to quiet down those thoughts and get to a point of, as Dr. Dispenza says, nothingness, when you become nothing, everything opens up to you. The secrets are revealed. For me, I have visions quite often of future events pertaining to me. I see myself where I'll be in 10 years. I'll see what's coming 3 months down the road. And, you know, I see little glimpses of things like that. And it allows me to know I'm on. And then when they come true, like the things that have happened over the last 2.5, 3 years, as far as the visions I've seen in meditation, and then as quickly as they come true, I got to one point where I'd meditate in the morning, let's say at 7, 8 a.m. in the morning when I wake up. And then I'd be at my staff meeting for me and my wife's company an hour later, 9 o'clock, sitting around a table with our employees. And literally the conversation and everything I just meditated and saw happen an hour before was literally playing itself out word for word in front of me in real time. And I'm just sitting there like, that's when I first started to discover this power. And it was pretty freaky. It was exciting, but it was kind of freaky because it's like, am I going insane? This can't be happening. Yet it kept happening over and over. And the different things I would envision and I'd see, and then they'd play themselves out. And it gave me that complete and total assurity moving forward in my life that everything is going to work out fine. It may seem scary right now. It may seem hard at this point, but knowing what I've seen and what's come true in the process, I've seen the end. I know where we're heading. So it gives me just utter and ultimate faith that what's coming will also be true and will also reveal itself. So that's another key kind of factor there. Belief. Belief is so important in this whole process of healing, of rewriting our trauma. You can't become something, reprogram something, if you don't truly believe that it is power or that it is possible for you to do it, and to have complete and total faith in the process working. It's working for you. Have that faith, have that belief, and allow it to come to you. So yeah, these are the things that I recommend, as far as meditation on it, practicing your incantations, really identifying, for most people, identifying that trauma, which was just a moment in time. It might not have been traumatic to anybody else except that one person who experienced it in that specific way. And whatever happened for them to download it into their brain, for them to store it into their brain, it became a traumatic experience for them. But it's all in how we view that experience. It's all in how we program our mind to believe that experience was. And that if we begin to start programming it that it happened for me, like for many years, I was embarrassed, ashamed, guilty, all because I had experienced sexual abuse at an early age. And I had all these issues with it. And now I'm so grateful that it happened to me. I look at it with such love and compassion and forgiveness because If I hadn't experienced that, how could I help other people overcome it? How could I help other people rewrite that story into something meaningful, something to benefit them if I didn't experience it myself? So that's really the bottom line in reprogramming our minds is we have to see the beauty and why it happened. We have to have enough understanding in our how our minds work and how the universe works that it's always happening for us, and we have to believe that with 100%
Right.
utter faith, because that's the truth. And until we do that, till we believe it is true, we can't rewrite it, we can't change what happened, and we'll continue to live
Well,
in
I,
that
I I'm a,
shame, guilt, whatever.
I'm a firm believer. I mean, looking at my own mental history, mental health history and everything. I'm a firm believer that that your greatest challenge can become your greatest triumph if you keep pushing on and persisting. And
Mhm.
and I don't. I used to like get guilty about about my illness and everything, and just like and then I was talking with my coach one time, and he says, don't you see that your soul wanted what your soul has been in charge of your whole life. You got sick, but that's what your soul needed in order to be able to overcome the things that it needed to in this lifetime. And another thing that sort of like I wanted to point out is the subconscious mind not only uh, that can tell the difference between reality and imagination. But this is something I've been learning from Bob Proctor. I don't know if you know who Bob Proctor is,
Oh yes, yes.
but he talks about paradigms, and paradigms are, but he says that the subconscious mind can't reject or accept. So no matter how, no matter I mean, so how the belief goes in your subconscious mind is how the subconscious mind is going to react to it. So if
Mhm.
you have like a positive thought, then the paradigm will be better. But he says that ultimately, you know, you said that you didn't have a father till seven, so all that stimuli that was coming into your brain before the age of seven, that's like the seminal period of a child's life. And you know you you had must have had so much negativity coming in, and it's really admirable to see someone like come out of that and really like achieve positivity and a positive life and a life of abundance. But and that's what I'm hoping to do. But on the other hand, I also say that the materialistic abundance is usually the last one to come, because I feel like I'm a very rich, wealthy person inside, but it hasn't been reflected economically yet.
I know that feeling. We keep waiting. My wife and I keep waiting for when that true abundance financially is going to come. Because yeah, we're strong, firm believers in giving value, go above and beyond. The amount you receive in compensation is equivalent to the value you provide and give out in the world. So
Right.
if you don't give much value, you're not going to receive much in return. So always give more than you can in whatever way that means. It doesn't mean financially for a lot of people. I'm just saying give more love, give more gratitude, give more appreciation, give more compassion, more forgiveness. Give all of these things because that's all free. That's what we can control. So when we
Right.
give that out to the world and we share that with the world, that comes back to us tenfold. And at the end of the day, that's going to start bringing the financial, in my belief, the financial abundance will follow. Like you said,
Right.
it's usually the last one, but make those healthy habits. Get in the healthy habits of providing, going above and beyond when it comes to loving others and being compassionate for others and forgiving
And
them. I mean,
service.
then service, yes, service. My big thing I always say is forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. And that's how we have to look at the world, look at ourselves. Forgive us. We didn't know what the hell we were doing. We still don't know what we're doing, but forgive ourselves for believing the lies and the stories we've made up to believe about who and what we are. When we can
Right.
step outside of that and forgive ourselves, the world starts opening up in unimaginable ways. So, yeah.
Well, I just, you, I know that everybody has their own path to follow and everything, but what you're talking about is in line with the motto of my company, which is recovery is always an option. And I'm dedicated to helping people with mental health problems and everything, but more than that, I want to help the families, because I think the families are really the I call them the silent victims of mental illness, because that the patients, or whatever you want to call them, have their doctors and stuff, but the family is often like totally excluded from the process of healing. And so that's what I want to use my experiences with the illness to be able to like turn that around. And as for the economic abundance, I don't know if you know Peter Sage. He was a Tony Robbins like trainer for 15 years, and now he's like his own self development coach. But he
Who
said
was it?
he
I
uses
didn't. Who
Peter
was it?
Sage. Peter
Oh, yes,
Sage.
yes. Yes, I'm familiar with
But
him.
he uses the analogy of a super tanker at sea, and it says it takes 12 miles for a super tanker to make a little turn when it's on the open seas. So
Wow.
you spin the wheel and you want it to turn, but it's not going to turn for 12 miles because it's so massive. So that's where like the attitude I've taken about my abundance. I
Mhm.
know if I continue to serve and love and have patience and faith, then the money will come. But I don't even get discouraged about it anymore, because I'm so certain it's going to happen.
I I fully agree with you and live in that same motto there. And I look at it, and that's when I said earlier, I teach my boys to ask the questions. I've always been an outsider when it comes to societal norms, and I've learned to ask myself the tough questions. If I'm not receiving the income I want, the abundance, if I'm experience anything of lack in the world, the sole answer is within me. Why am I creating this experience? Why am I having to go through this? What purpose does it serve? It's always serving a purpose. We get out of that. We have to remove ourselves from the victim mentality that things are happening to us, woe is me, and instead we have to ask ourselves tough questions. Why am I going through this? Why are you why do you suffer from schizophrenia? Why do I, why did I experience depression and all the different, traumas I've had? I start going back, able to really look at every event of my life and see why it happened the way it had to happen. It's almost like a life review in a sense. But when I meditate, a lot of times I go back to specific moments that have affected me, and I try and analyze why they happened and what purpose they serve. And when I start to do that, it the all of the dots start to connect. It's like, that's why that happened. In order for me to do this and to do that and bring this person into my life. And it's just
Right.
there are no coincidences, none whatsoever. Everything is happening the way it's supposed to. It's just our victim mentality that makes it, tries to put a label on it, that it's a coincidence, that
Right.
1 in a million. It's like, no, that happened to you because there is a specific reason you were supposed to experience that. Figure out why you experienced that and what your purpose for it was, and you'll resolve yourself and remove that trauma. You'll remove that pain, basically. Once you solve
Right.
the problem removes itself, and then you're on to the next phase, the next step of the game.
Well, Stephen Jobs says the only way to connect the dots is retroactively.
Yeah, yeah. You can project into
Yeah,
the future all you want about connecting the dots, but the only true way to connect them is to go backwards and to see how they all had to fall into place exactly the way they did. If one thing was
right,
out of place, it would have thrown the whole process off.
right,
But we forget all those little things, and we get caught up in the memories and the why me, and I wish this had been different. When we embrace it with gratitude, that's when the power starts to really shift. That's my opinion on it.
right. Well, we got to wrap up very soon, but just to give an idea, one of the analogies Bob Proctor uses is if you take a plane from Miami, Florida, and you want to go to New York City, and the navigation system is 1 degree off, then you end up in Cleveland.
Yes, absolutely. It's it's the small little tiny things that make up everything. My first mentor, he always used to say, you know, the first 100 times you do anything, you're gonna suck at it. So just push
Right,
forward, keep moving one day at a time. If you get 1% better each day, 1% better than the previous day, that's 365% improvement than where you were simply 1 year ago today. So, don't
right,
don't underestimate that small little bit that we get, as long as you did something better today than you did yesterday. For me, I went on a jog this morning. My neighbor has been trying on me. We've been trying to get up and go jog early in the morning. And finally, he texted this morning, "Hey, you ready? You want to go?" And I said, "Yeah, let's do it. Give me 10 minutes." And out the door I went, and we went for a jog this morning. And if nothing else, this entire day went right. I can look at tonight as I lay my head down on the pillow and say, you know what? I got up, I went on a jog this morning. That was an improvement from yesterday. That's all it takes. Not everything's going to go our way every single moment of every day. But as
right.
long as we can reflect on those tiny little improvements we make, the world can change in the blink of an eye for us, or by
Yeah,
365% in 1 year, if we just commit to those little changes. So, yeah,
right.
good point there.
Well, thank you very much for joining me today, Joey. Why don't you tell people how they can get in touch with you? I see you're at the Reality Practice Network. Is that your website or is that your Instagram or what's the
Yeah. The Reality Practice Network, you can find it on YouTube. That's the channel on YouTube and the Facebook page, the Reality Practice Network. My website is myrealitypractice.com. You can find me there. You can email me at realitypractice@gmail.com. If you're interested in learning about coaching and how to work with me on reprogramming your mind and the traumas, how to rewrite those, just hop on the website and there's buttons you can click to schedule a free consultation, and we'll hop on a call and go from there, see if we're a good fit. And then also I do my own show here on the Mental Health Warriors every other Friday. So I'm off this Friday, but next Friday. So every other Friday at 6 p.m. British time and noon Central time here in the States. You can watch my show on rewriting and overcoming the stories of our past. So I appreciate you having me on the show, Dale. It's been a fun.
Well,
Uh,
it's been a pleasure welcoming you to the Mental Health Warriors, and we're getting stronger every day. And with people like you, we're certainly going to really start taking over the world. And thank you for your time and your patience and your compassion and your great stories. And I hope everybody enjoyed this episode. And always, find you can find the schedule at on Facebook. And just have a great night, everybody. And thank you very much for attending. And thank you, Joey. It's been a great show.
Thank you for having me.